James Carter, stood outside the polished glass entrance of Sterling Enterprises in downtown Chicago, checking the time on his phone for the third time. His suit was clean but clearly old, with slightly worn cuffs that he had carefully repaired the night before. It was the only suit he owned, and today it mattered more than ever. James was a single father raising his 8-year-old daughter, Emma. For years he had taken whatever work he could find, always putting her needs first. But after his previous employer closed its local office, James had spent weeks searching for another stable position. The job at Sterling Enterprises could change everything. He took a deep breath and entered the building. At reception, he introduced himself and explained that he had an interview scheduled with CEO Victoria Reed. The receptionist checked her computer and pointed toward the executive waiting area. "Miss Reed will see you shortly." James thanked her and sat down. He reviewed his resume again. 15 years of software development experience, several major systems designed and repaired, a successful record of reducing operating costs, and one specialized software architecture that Sterling Enterprises had been struggling to develop. James knew he could help the company. When the elevator doors opened, Victoria Reed stepped out with 2 executives behind her. She was known throughout the company as brilliant, demanding, and intimidating. She glanced at James. "You're the applicant." "Yes, ma'am." Victoria looked at his resume. "You've been unemployed for several months." "Yes, and you're applying for a senior position." James nodded. "I believe my experience matches what you're looking for." Victoria gave a short laugh. Confidence is easy when you have nothing left to lose. The executives exchanged uncomfortable glances. James remained calm. "I understand your concern, but if you look at my previous projects, I've looked enough." Victoria picked up a glass of water from a nearby table. Then, without warning, she threw it directly into James's face. The lobby went silent. Water dripped from his hair and soaked the front of his old suit. One employee covered her mouth in shock. James didn't move. He slowly wiped his face with a handkerchief. Victoria stared at him as if expecting an angry reaction. Instead, James picked up his resume from the floor. "Thank you for your time," he said quietly. He turned toward the elevator. No shouting, no insults. No threats, just dignity. But as James walked away, he didn't notice the older man standing near the hallway entrance. Richard Sterling, the company's chairman, had witnessed everything. His expression was cold. He looked at Victoria, then at the wet resume in James's hand, and finally he spoke. "James Carter." James stopped. He turned around. Richard took one step forward. "Don't leave." Victoria's confidence disappeared. She knew that voice. The chairman wasn't angry because of the water. He was angry because he knew exactly who James Carter was. James slowly turned away from the elevator when he heard Richard Sterling's voice. The chairman walked toward him with a calm expression, but his eyes were fixed on Victoria Reed. "Mr. Carter, please come back." Richard said. James hesitated. He looked down at his soaked suit and then at the CEO who had humiliated him only moments earlier. "I think the interview is over," James replied. Richard shook his head. "No, it hasn't even started." Victoria stepped forward. "Richard, this is a misunderstanding." Richard turned toward her. "No, Victoria. I watched everything." The lobby became silent again. Richard pointed toward James. "Do you know who he is?" Victoria glanced at James's resume. "An applicant." Richard's expression hardened. "That's what you think." He took the resume from James and held it up. "This man designed the Orion software architecture." Victoria froze. Orion was Sterling Enterprises' biggest unresolved technology problem. The company had spent nearly 2 years and millions of dollars trying to develop a system capable of connecting its outdated platforms with its new artificial intelligence infrastructure. Every proposed solution had failed. Richard continued. 15 years ago, James helped build the foundation of the system our company is desperately trying to create today. Victoria stared at James. "Why didn't you put that on your resume?" James shrugged. "Because I wanted to be judged by what I could do now, not by what I did 15 years ago." Richard smiled slightly. "That answer is exactly why I wanted to meet you." Victoria's face became pale. "But why didn't anyone tell me?" Richard looked directly at her. "Because I wanted to see how you treated him without knowing who he was." Victoria said nothing. Richard turned toward the employees gathered nearby. "This company has lost its way. If a hard-working father can walk through these doors seeking employment and be humiliated because of an old suit." James looked uncomfortable. "I don't want anyone fired because of me." Richard nodded. This isn't about revenge. He turned toward Victoria. This is about leadership, Victoria swallowed. Richard continued, a CEO's job isn't to make people feel small. It's to recognize talent, protect the company, and respect the people who walk through its doors. Victoria looked at James or apologize. James nodded politely. I appreciate that. Then Richard said the words nobody expected.
James isn't here to take a job.
Victoria's shoulders relaxed slightly, but Richard continued, he's here to take yours. Victoria's face went completely still. What Richard looked around the lobby. The board has already reviewed your performance. Today's incident simply confirmed what we've been discussing for months. James stared at Richard in disbelief. I never applied for the CEO position. Richard smiled. You didn't. I offered it. Victoria stepped backward. James looked at his daughter's photograph on his phone. Then back at Richard. This is too much. Richard answered calmly, maybe. But sometimes the person who deserves the opportunity is the person who never expects it. James looked toward the elevator one final time. He had entered Sterling Enterprises hoping for a job. He was leaving the lobby with an offer to lead the entire company.